NFL Week 9 had a lot of good football to react to here today. Plenty of either surprising or highly consequential outcomes to break down here today for the Week 10 NFL Power Rankings show. We've got a lot of movement here in the rankings today. Very much looking forward to it. Let's get into it. As we do get started, you guys, if you could do me a huge favor, just hit that like button down below. It takes just a second. It's a free and easy thing that really does support my channel. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss all of my NFL content heading your way soon. But let's begin, as always, at the bottom of the rankings in the super mega booty tier. The Tennessee Titans, hey, they covered a spread this week against the Chargers. At least there's that. They started much better with Cam Ward. That's kind of what you're looking for, right? Just keep building up some things with the young players on this team as they tread water through the rest of this season. But I do think they are the worst team in the league, just edging out the New York Jets, who were on bye this week. So we didn't have to watch the Jets this week. It's nice. But I do have a new team in this bottom tier, and I'm going to welcome the New Orleans Saints back into the bottom tier of the power rankings. They had kind of scratched and clawed their way just barely out of the bottom tier for a few weeks there, but a negative 52-point differential over the last 3 weeks. This team seems to be losing a little bit of that scrappy edge that they did have earlier in the year. And this, by the way, isn't really about the QB change to Tyler Shough. Honestly, I mean, as it tends to go with Tyler Shough, who's one of the more hated draft prospects I can remember by a large portion of NFL fans. Like, he's getting hate for a 4th and 4 interception that he just throws out there down by 24 points instead of taking a sack, and he's getting hate for it. He was okay in this game. Better than Spencer Rattler's played the last 2 weeks, but clearly this team is just not a good infrastructure for any young quarterback. So I do worry about that with Tyler Shough. But the Saints are, they feel like a pretty easy out at this stage. They were double-digit underdogs this week against the Rams and really didn't give much resistance at all from either side of the football. But that is going to conclude the very bottom tier there. Let's go to our 5th tier in these rankings, which is just the booty tier. The Miami Dolphins are going to find themselves in this group, at least for now. We'll see kind of where this goes for them. I've discussed this with Miami where, yeah, they're bad, and there's a lot of crap to say about this team and the direction that they're headed, and they're obviously, on their way towards a major rebuild. Congratulations, Dolphins fans. You finally have rid yourself of their GM, Chris Grier, who I don't remember a coach or a GM that got as long of a leash after doing a poor job as that guy right there. So at least he's gone. But, Miami has at least been in some of these games. They've had some positive moments this season, but the second half of that game last Thursday night against the Ravens, you saw a lot of quit from this team. It could spiral from there, but at least for now, I will keep them here in just the booty tier, but falling down 3 spots after they did trade away Jalen Phillips as well for a 3rd-round pick. So the roster dump has begun as they head towards a rebuild. Next, we have the Cleveland Browns maintaining their 28th ranking here. It's never a good sign when your offensive head coach is giving up play calling duties. And to be honest, there's some things I like about Kevin Stefanski, but the idea that he is this offensive guru, I haven't felt that way about Kevin Stefanski for a long time, so I'm not even that mad about it, but that's usually the writing on the wall that there's going to be a coaching change. But at least we didn't have to watch the Browns or the Jets this week as they were both on bye week. Maybe that's why the football was so good this weekend. But the Washington Commanders at number 27, a -6 in the rankings this week. They are the biggest fallers here for the Week 10 rankings. Jaden Daniels obviously gets hurt. That's a big deal. It wasn't just him, though. Marshawn Lattimore, maybe not a huge loss, but even like Luke McCaffrey goes down. I haven't been the biggest fan of Luke McCaffrey, but he had played some decent ball this year. It's a lost season for the Commanders, and even as someone that thought there was going to be some regression down to the mean from this team that was such a Cinderella story last year, this has been a nightmare scenario. I didn't think they'd be quite this bad. Obviously, injuries have kind of compounded with the fact that this team was already probably destined to disappoint a little bit here, but especially the lack of defensive talent, just getting steamrolled the majority of this season. At this point, they feel slow. They have no pass rush. It's just not really anything Dan Quinn can do with that unit right now, and obviously no quarterback, no Terry McLaurin. They're down bad offensively at this point too. So they are at this point one of the worst, most beatable teams in football, and it's really tough to see. At least they kept their first round pick and didn't give that up for Laramie Tunsil. That's kind of your one saving grace. But it's pretty crazy that the Texans are looking at this like, man, we thought we were sending Tunsil for like a top 60 draft pick. Might be a top 40 draft pick. That certainly changes the math in terms of what Houston got back in that one. But yeah, not a good week to be a Commanders fan, and hopefully Jaden Daniels can make a full recovery, whether that's this season or next year. But at number 26, the New York Giants, moving up just by the fact that I think they do look a little bit better than the Commanders at this point. I mean, Jackson Dart is doing what he can out there. I mean, dude, like, obviously, all these skill players getting hurt. We talked about Scadaboo, how much that hurt last week. No Malik Neighbors out there. Darius Slayton, he's a roller coaster type of wide receiver. He has some years where it feels like he just can't catch a football. He has other years where he plays pretty well. This is one of those years where it feels like he can't catch a football. So he's leaving Jackson Dart out to dry. Now, the main reason they lost this week is the defense, dude. They had no resistance at all against a 49ers offense that was just kind of nickel and diming them and picking them apart all day long. I don't really even understand why this defense underwhelms as much as they do, given the defensive line talent they have. A lot of questions about Shane Bowen. Are you going to fire him? I mean, obviously he's got to go. I would have made the move already, but it's frustrating, man. They fall to 2-7, and I think the season is officially over at this stage if it wasn't already. But they do get a +1 as their divisional opponent there had an even worse week somehow than the New York Giants. But on a positive note here, the Las Vegas Raiders, who do lose this week, but they take the Jags all the way down to the wire, and they obviously go for 2 for the win, as you should. I mean, why play for a tie when you're 2-5 coming off a bye week trying to save your season? They had a guy open in the back corner of the end zone. Geno saw him after a good day from Geno here, and unfortunately, a batted pass ends the game for him. But this week was a reminder, like, this team lost the entire heart of the idea of the Raiders this year when Brock Bowers essentially got hurt in the first game and a half of this season. And he has just a sensational day out there, and you saw the offense just come right back to life. I think it was week 2 where you could see Brock Bowers was out there. He just wasn't healthy, and then he got shut down pretty quickly after that. I can't quite remember the timeline there, but if you just look at their win week 1 and what happened this week against Jacksonville when they've had a healthy Brock Bowers, this team can move the football. It's not a good defense. We know that. This team is far from perfect, but I do think we saw that as long as they have that bad man, number 89, healthy for them, they're going to be a more competitive team to deal with moving forward. So far from a bad loss for the Raiders. Hell, they could have just taken the tie if they wanted. Now, before we do go to my next tier here, I want to shout the sponsor for today's video, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog and their pick'em contests are the perfect pairing for all sports fans. Whether you are a diehard NFL fan or you're getting into basketball and hockey starting up, you can mix and match any number of sports. They have countless sports on the app there at Underdog, but you can select anywhere from 2 to 8 players from any number of sports. Select their player stats, higher or lower, and if you hit on those lineups, you get a chance at massive payouts. So you can find 2 or 3 of those options that you feel really strong about heading into the game, or you can, go with lower level entries with higher payout options. This Monday night was a perfect example of it. I didn't necessarily know where the game was going to go Monday night, but I put together a bit of a more long shot lineup for a Cardinals Cowboys, and even though I missed on the lineup, I needed just 2 Dak Prescott completions. Was seeing that game all the way down to the buzzer. Unfortunately, Dak got sacked 3 straight times when he only needed 2 completions. It's a little bit frustrated, but the entertainment value on a lower level lineup still kind of made it worth it. Not gonna lie. And it's even better when you do win. On top of that, of course. But right now, if you sign up using code TFG at Underdog Fantasy, they will give you a bonus match of $100 when you play just $5. This is a new promotion from them. They haven't guaranteed how long that's going to stick around, so that makes this a great time to sign up, and you will support my channel in a big way in the process. So that's code TFG at Underdog Fantasy. Please do play responsibly if you do sign up, and good luck on top of it. But let's get back to the power rankings here with the Frisky tier. This is our 4th tier. And I think our number 24 ranked Cincinnati Bengals here, staying put as the 24th team, are the definition of a frisky football team. Look, Joe Flacco continues to just absolutely ball out, dude. This has to be the best run of regular season football that he's ever played. He looks awesome, but this defense is like somehow even worse than last year, and I didn't know that was gonna be possible. The D-line is just so putrid without Trey Hendrickson out there. The defensive coordinator change isn't helping, and what did they think was gonna happen trotting 2 like mid-round rookie linebackers out there? Tyrese Knight has shown some flashes, but he needs a veteran next to him as you like develop Tyrese Knight. And the fact that they've like benched Logan Wilson to start Barrett Carter, I don't even really get it, to be honest, that one. Bengals fans will have to explain that. But they're lost out there. It's like this gaping void in the middle of the defense that offenses are just taking advantage of every single snap. So the Bengals are what they are. They can put up 35 freaking points a game with Joe Flacco, but I think I saw this is the first team in NFL history to score 38 plus points in back-to-back weeks and lose. It's absurd. But then we have the NFC's version of the Bengals in the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the last 2 weeks, I will say that comparison hasn't really held up. Dak Prescott and this Cowboys offense have certainly slowed down for the first third of the season. This looked like maybe the best offense in the league. I don't think you can say that about them at this point. Dak just isn't quite as dialed in as he was to start the year, where he was phenomenal. And this offensive line is an issue too. Like, these tackles are a problem. Like, Terrence Steele is just not a good pass protector. When this team gets into these shootouts, you really feel his weaknesses. Tyler Guyton hasn't really developed, unfortunately. So, you know, that's a problem when you can't pass protect, when you need to get into shootouts, obviously. So that showed up this week against the Cardinals, certainly. And then we know this defense stinks. Like, that's nothing new. So it's actually a -5 for Dallas. I didn't want to destroy them last week after they went into Denver and lost. But this one, losing at home as favorites, kind of in a make or break game for your season. Like, things look a lot different now after losing to the Cardinals here versus had they won. Could have walked out with a 500 record. Now you're 3-5-1 and really spiraling. So this week's certainly going to tank the Cowboys. But then the Arizona Cardinals, they are going to get a +3 and jump the Dallas Cowboys here. We said this last week, like, this team is so much better than their record indicated after 5 straight last-minute losses with a combined score of 13 points. Like, the film has shown that this team is so much better, and, you know, Jacoby kept doing his thing, which wasn't terribly unexpected against this Cowboys defense. I think this week the story was much more about the Cardinals defense, frankly, who did just dominate this Cowboys offense that didn't score other than a block punt return for a touchdown. The D-line just waking up here, getting especially Walter Nolan into the lineup. Their first round pick played his first game, and he looked amazing. Like, he looked so good. He absolutely is a dude that could make a difference for this Cardinals season team as much as this season. Calais Campbell's playing well. I thought Josh Sweat maybe had his best game as a Cardinal so far. He was showing up left and right in this one. They were making plays in the secondary, forcing the ball out, showing a ton of fight. Like, you got to just give this team a ton of credit for not giving up on the year, understanding that they're so close, yet so far away. But I'm curious to see where this goes. This is where you really look back at, I mean, really any number of those 5 losses, but especially the Titans game that felt like the hand of God stepped in to take that game away from them. And just wish they were 4-4 instead of 3-5. It would feel much more reasonable that this team could maybe sneak into the wild card consideration and stuff. I just don't know in a competitive NFC if that's necessarily where this is going to go. But, can they show us reasons to get excited about this team? How does this quarterback dilemma play out with Jacoby and Kyler? There's kind of a split in terms of, who people think they should go with moving forward. I'd still give Kyler one more look at it now that this team is playing better offensively. I do think he played underrated when he was out there. The receivers really were letting him down if you go back and watch those games. But maybe give Kyler a game to show that he can do what Jacoby is doing right now. Maybe a short leash, but at the same time, Jacoby is just playing really good football, and it's not even necessarily a diss on Kyler Murray. It's just Jacoby's kind of dealing right now. So it's whatever your opinion is on that. I'm totally interested to hear what you guys think in the comments. I think both sides are rational. So let me know, who would you start for the Cardinals moving forward? But it's going to be fun to monitor that moving forward. And ultimately, kind of like, does Jonathan Gannon kind of get this defense playing up to the potential I think they had coming into the year? That's kind of the point with Jonathan Gannon in year 3 here, is to get performances like that in Dallas. And I think we're in evaluation mode with Arizona, but I wouldn't want to play this team right now. They might be 3-5, but they have a better point differential than 5 other teams with winning records this season. But then at number 21, another bird team, the Atlanta Falcons. This is tough because a lot of teams around them did have good weeks, and naturally that's going to help them jump the Falcons, who get a -4 this week. But it wasn't a bad week for the Falcons. Like, if you just didn't really care who won this game and you just watched it and you wanted to feel better about the Falcons, I think you do. I think the defense did some stuff to slow down this Patriots offense that has been humming. I still have a lot of questions about the upside of that defense in general, but they got some good stuff out of that pass rush. They forced some mistakes out of Drake May, which has been hard to come by. Like, it's been hard to force mistakes out of him. A couple fumbles, a pick. But the offense, I mean, Michael Penix looked really good. They really got Drake London going. Maybe the best Drake London game of his career, just catching everything, like on Christian Gonzalez at times too, which is easier said than done. So I think the Falcons looked better this week, yet other teams around them won, and I think it's justified to drop them in the power rankings as they now fall to 3-5. They missed the PAT that would have tied this game in New England, and then they weren't able to get the plays to finish a comeback effort because there were still opportunities after they missed that PAT to tie the game with like 5 minutes left. But they are a weird team. I like them better this week than I did last week, but they are moving down 4 spots in the power rankings. Sometimes that's just how it goes. But at number 20, I've got the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're losing a spot. Again, a lot of teams in this range won and had good weeks. We'll talk about those teams very soon here, obviously. But just escaping against the Raiders, it's not a bad win. There's no such thing as a bad win, especially a bad win on the road in the NFL, but there are wins that aren't necessarily good wins. This was an expected win to beat the Raiders, and they hardly escaped, right? Like, if the Raiders don't, or if the Jags don't bat that pass down, they get the 2-point conversion, they win in overtime, and we're having a different conversation about the Jags. So the defense took a step back this week. I thought the passing game was fine. They really committed to the run and tried to edge things out in this one, but overall, they stopped the skid, maybe cleaned a few things up with the offense, and can hopefully continue to build from here. This is one of those teams where, like, the expectations got so high, and I'm guilty of this. I made the video hyping them up early in the season, but we got to remember, like, they're only halfway through their first season in this new regime, and they are still ahead of schedule, but they are going to lose a spot here because like I said, there's multiple teams that had huge weeks. One of them is the Carolina Panthers. They climb up into the teens for the first time in God knows how long, as they climb to 5-4 on the season. They get +3 in the rankings this week. And anyone that's been around this channel knows I freaking love the Panthers, man. But I don't know what to do with them. This win going into Green Bay was huge. I mean, the defense completely bounced back from that horror show that we saw against the Bills just the week before. And we've seen a lot more performances this year that resembled what we saw in Lambeau this week, where they were tackling well, getting some interesting moments from the pass rush, some guys making plays on the back end, just playing good team defense in a way that they certainly didn't last year and haven't in years before that. And then offensively, it's like, okay, it's kind of, okay, the run game is efficient. Bryce Young he reminds me a lot of like Alex Smith at this point, like where he's making enough plays to win close games. Has some clutch gene in him. Bryce has quietly been one of the more clutch quarterbacks in the league over the last season plus. He gets the ball tied with 2 minutes to go in this game and made plenty of drive-moving throws to get them into field goal position to get out of Lambeau with a win. Like he's doing a lot of the good point guard stuff you like to see, and he had some really impressive scrambles under pressure to keep drives alive too. So like the stat line didn't look big for them, but again, he was running the ball, moving the chains when he needed to, did have a pick down in the end zone, which wasn't ideal. So it's like, it's not like he looked great, but he didn't play bad in the biggest win of his career. But like I said, I don't know what to do with this Panthers team. I'm not quite ready to call them in our next tier as a playoff fringe team. I've said this with them, and I'll hold it. Outside of that Falcons game, this team either squeezes a close one out or gets boat raced. And I think it's awesome that they went into Lambeau, got to 5-4, and squeezed a close one out. I just will say this. I'm very close to bumping them up to the next tier. I would love to be able to do that. Go crush the Saints this week in Charlotte. Like, I do think if we're jumping up to that next tier, there's a difference in upside than the teams that we've talked about to this point in time. We've seen the friskiness from the Panthers. That's why they're in the frisky tier. I love the direction things are going right now. But it goes back to what I said when they played the Jets, and I wanted to see them take that leap then, and they barely escaped against the Jets. Go crush the Saints. Then I will put them into the next tier. But regardless of whether the number 19 spot will satisfy Panthers fans or not, this was the biggest win for them in a long time in terms of getting realistic hope for the future, I think. That was big time, what they did this week. But now as we jump up to my playoff fringe tier, I think this is probably going to be the most controversial team ranking in today's video. I'm still holding on to hope for the Houston Texans, who fall to 3-5 this week. I know it's tough because that record is about as close to a death sentence as you're going to get. And CJ Stroud got concussed this week. We don't know if he's going to be able to play this week as they take on the Jaguars. But a couple reasons why I'm hanging on to the Texans literally by a thread here as they begin this third tier, and they might lose this spot this week. We'll see. But a couple key points on them. Their 5 losses have all come against teams with winning records by 1 score. And that was no different this week. In a game where they looked like they were in a good position to maybe win that game, CJ Stroud leaves with a concussion in the second quarter. And if my memory serves me right, they didn't score a point in the second half with Davis Mills against that nasty Broncos defense. But clearly this defense can keep them around. I think when Stroud's been out there, they've at least found some answers with the offense. He's playing pretty solid. They've got Jalen Noel going. They lose this game 15-18. Just one of those, it's just not your year type of losses for the Texans. But I don't walk out of that game feeling that much worse about them. Now, they are losing 4 spots in the rankings. I think the fall is justified after another loss here, but this is not a bad 3-5 football team, man. And like, they're probably going to be favored against the Jags, even if it is Davis Mills. Like, I would be curious to track that as the week progresses. Right now, they're 1.5 point favorites right now against the Jags. I feel like that's probably projecting that Stroud's not going to be able to play. So, I mean, if they can get a win this week against the Jags and get Stroud back, I still think this team's season is not over yet, but their margin for error is officially gone at this point. Like, they can only afford to lose 1 or 2 more games. So they got to get this one against the Jags, I think, because they do have some harder games down the road in a few weeks. But then at number 17, one of these teams that did have a big win this week, The Chicago Bears, they climbed to 5-3. They're going to get a +3 in the overall rankings, but I am going to bump them up from what was Schrodinger's box of cats, now the frisky tier. I'm bumping them up to that playoff fringe tier. I think the Bears are the definition of a team on the playoff fringe here. They're not there yet. Clearly, this defense has issues. And this week, I think, is fun to look at compared to what I have said about the Bears in the last 3 weeks when Bears fans have been mad that I'm not ranking them higher. I kept screaming from the rooftops, look, defensive regression is coming, Bears fans. Whether you want to say I'm a hater or not, it's coming. The turnovers were going, you were going to stop getting 2 turnovers a week because it's not to hate on the Bears defense. It's just, that's football. That's what happens. You can't count on that every week. When you peel that away, you don't have a whole lot to work with this defense. We saw that this week, right? They got lit up by the Bengals. But what I had been saying was Caleb and this offense needs to wake up and play a full game and show us more for when that defensive regression hits. And those two things happened really at the same time in this game. They needed Caleb to make a bunch of throws in this game to keep pace with that Bengals offense that is genuinely explosive right now. And Caleb did, especially in the game-winning drive after they had blown the lead. I think it's also worth noting, like, they were the better team in this game. They just kind of imploded the comeback effort. They botched an onside kick that really made this game even possible for the Bengals to win. But I think it was huge to see Caleb respond in that moment and find those throws down the field. And they really have found something with this run game, with their offensive line. They are smashing dudes up front. Darnell Wright, Theo Benedette, shout out to him. And Kyle Monangai, huge breakout week for him. Great to see Colston Loveland emerge. Like, this draft class, feeling much better about them. And you can even go back to last draft class as well. I know I trashed this defense, and I don't feel great about this defense, but it was really good to see the young Austin Booker make his season debut this week. That number 2 edge spot has been a boneyard for the Bears this year. Booker in year 2, someone that had a lot of hype coming out of camp, a developmental traits-based prospect, made his debut this week. Bull rushed Orlando Brown. Like, if they can get something from him, that's a building block to get some better defense moving forward. So, some wins for Ryan Poles, to say the least, with some of these young guys they've drafted in this year and last year. But yeah, big week for the Bears as they climb to 5-3. Excited to see where their season goes from here. And just inside that NFC North, the Minnesota Vikings, I think the best week of any team this week. And I think them coming in now with the 16th ranking after moving up 7 spots and up a tier in the rankings as we head into week 10, the midway point in the season, after JJ McCarthy just kind of made his second debut. Obviously, we saw him earlier in the season. He did not play well. That was well documented, but it was also very noteworthy. Like, the offensive line was a complete train wreck with injuries. They didn't have Jordan Addison, who was very big in this game against Detroit. Just the ability to kind of acknowledge that he didn't play well earlier, but also say he's got an opportunity to kind of reset, and we can take it from here, and he can really head into the second half of this year with a fresh start of sorts. And that's really what this felt like with them going into Detroit and winning. Now, I'll come back to JJ McCarthy in a second. I've got some thoughts on how he played. But, dude, this was really about the defense. Heading into the year on the Vikings, the idea was, like, JJ doesn't have to be amazing at quarterback because this defense has been unbelievable. They've been a top 5 defense the last couple of years. They loaded up on that side of the ball. All the things we say about Brian Flores, that has just vanished this season. This has been one of the worst defenses in the entire league. It's felt like Flores just hasn't really been bringing a lot to the table schematically or out-coaching opposing coordinators. That flipped this week. They clearly had the upper hand schematically this week. They were blitzing the daylights, confusing Jared Goff, confusing the offensive line. The Lions were in hell with their run game and the pass game. A dominant day from this defense. And then you didn't have to have quite as much pressure on JJ McCarthy. But like I said, I'll mention how the offense played. I thought JJ McCarthy played perfectly reasonable, perfectly fine. somewhere between fine and good. There were a lot of missed throws on tape, a lot of inaccurate throws, but I thought the poise against the rush was exceptional. Frankly, the pocket presence for him is impressive. He had a big scramble for a touchdown in a big spot. He made a couple of big throws on top of, being late on a couple or, a couple questionable reads, got away with a pick in there for one of those games. So it was like some good, some bad, but again, good enough when you have Justin Jefferson making a one-hand catch in the end zone. You have the screen game helping you out a little bit with Kevin O'Connell pushing some right buttons at the right time. And you have the defense playing like we expected them to play like coming into the year. So that's super encouraging, especially now, like, okay, you've got Blake Cashman back. He gets the forced fumble on David Montgomery. That's something he's capable of. He's a superstar linebacker. They've been without him. You had Andrew Van Ginkel out there helping against the run and in their blitz game, helping confuse Jared Goff, dropping into coverage. You're getting healthier on the defense. So it's just total reset week for the Vikings. Not only is it the midway point in the season, not only is this just when J.J. McCarthy comes back, not only do I have them 16 smack dab in the middle of the league, they're also 4-4. So there's a little poetic beauty in terms of how to look at the Vikings moving forward. But I'm excited to see where this goes. They have a lot of upside here in the second half of the year, especially because there's clear building blocks for J.J. McCarthy to get better and better as we go. He's only 22 years old. Like, a long way to go here with this, but this is a very talented team, as we said coming in, and we saw all of the pockets of that talent on display in an effort to go into Detroit and win as an 8.5-point underdog. So the biggest of weeks for Vikings fans and the Vikings. But then at number 15, the San Francisco 49ers, they keep their spot at number 15. They take care of business against the Giants. I really don't have any new thoughts on the Niners this week. It kind of went as you might have expected. They felt like the better coached team. Mac Jones continues to just play good, efficient football. Completed like his first 14 passes in this game. Wasn't a lot of resistance from the Giants. The defense doesn't have a ton of talent. They're not going to scare you, but they give you a decent enough floor that as long as this team's able to get you between 23, 27 points, they're going to be in a position to win a lot of games. I still don't know where the upside sits with this team with all these injuries, but they get to 6-3, and you got to be impressed with the effort that these guys are showing to not fall apart. So many teams would fall apart with the amount of injuries that they've had. And I still think their best shot at upside is to get Brock Purdy back, to get Brandon Ayuk back, and maybe be more of a top 10 dominant offense with an okay defense, and maybe you can play spoiler in the playoffs. But I don't look at the Niners without all those superstar players, especially, they lost another one this week. Mykel Williams goes down the same week that they traded for Keion White. So it's like one step forward, one step back, another injury this week. It's just crazy, man. But they're staying put at number 15. I think it's a reasonable spot for them. Then at number 14, the LA Chargers. Not going to lie, not the most impressive week for them. They took care of business, can't take that away from them, but it was against our number 32 ranked Titans. And it's the same week they lose Joe Alt for this season this time. They got him back for a couple games. They look great offensively, but if you go back to when they didn't have Joe Alt, it was a problem. It was chaos for Justin Herbert, just two turnstiles at tackle. It's really hard to work around that, and I'm really worried about the upside now for the Chargers, who are an offensive-minded team. When they've had Joe Alt out there, they've shown they can help the right tackle, leave Joe Alt on an island who's playing so well, and that was enough to push the ball to these playmakers, to run the ball. Again, when Joe Alt's been out of the lineup, it's changed the entire math of this entire team, so I'm worried about it. I got to see them play better ball without Joe Alt before I increase their rankings. And again, beating the Titans by a touchdown, not going to give the Chargers or any team a lot of credit for that type of deal. But then another team that did have a huge week, getting a +3 in the rankings this week, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, taking down the vaunted Indianapolis Colts. And I've been saying this for like 3 weeks that I can't quite adjust to this idea that the Steelers defense is just putrid and this movable force that teams are just going to keep steamrolling every week. That had been the case for really all this season for the most part. but I still was kind of holding the faith that they were going to start making some plays and figure things out, maybe make some adjustments. And that's exactly what we saw this week. I mean, what an outing for this defense against the Colts. And hopefully this is a continuation of things to come. If we see this defense now flipping a script and this is what we're going to get from them, they are a true playoff caliber team. It's just 1 week, small sample size sport and all that. I got to see more of it before I bump them up to our next tier, but really encouraging to see that. TJ Watt gets his big signature strip sack. Alex Highsmith was awesome. But it wasn't just the pass rushers, and obviously the D-line has a part to do with this, but their run defense especially was it feels like they just fixed it overnight, frankly. But the Colts of all teams, with that run game, could not move the ball against this Steelers front, and then they got to get into those third and pass situations where their coverage was not perfect, but much better this week. So a huge week for the Steelers. I think the idea of this team was to have a defensive performance like that so that you don't need God mode Aaron Rodgers out there. This game, I think, was the vision for the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers, and it got them a big win this week to take a 2-game lead in the AFC North. But Steelers fans, not going to be too happy with me here, because as we jump up to the next tier, I am going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens, the 3-5 Baltimore Ravens, inverted record of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Ravens just feel back to me. The defense isn't going to have the upside that I think you hoped it would have heading into the year, for sure. I mean, a lot of injuries and just guys not playing as well. Still some questions about Zach Orr overall. But, when they were losing those games, number one, it was to a lot of really great opponents. But they were giving up 35, 40 points. And even when you go back to their loss to the Rams, like week 6, I think it was, the defense actually showed that they were improving in that game. That was just a Cooper Rush game where the offense only scored 3 points. But this is now like 3 straight games where the defense has showed that they've flatlined a little bit in a good way. They've regressed to the mean. All they need is to just be average. As long as Lamar is back healthy and wheeling and dealing like the MVP caliber quarterback that he is, as he did Thursday night. Now, I know it was against the Dolphins, but I think Lamar is one of those quarterbacks that when you see him healthy and you see him locked in, you know what this offense is capable of, and that is being one of the best offenses in the entire league. So they're not without their flaws. They're a 3-5 team. I've got them ranked 12. But this team's dangerous. There's no way around it. I said it 2 weeks ago. This team is going to be 6-5 before you can blink, and I think we're on a fast track towards that. Now, they do have to go to Minnesota this week. That's going to be a really fun game. Maybe they do drop one this week, but after that, it's Browns, Jets, Bengals, Steelers, but in Baltimore, and Bengals again. So maybe 6-5 wasn't perfectly calculated out, depending on how they play against the Vikes this week, but certainly back to 500 before you can blink. Obviously, in terms of making the playoffs, all this team wants is a chance to get in the dance. But if we're talking about power rankings and how good this team is, if you had to play them this week, they're a playoff caliber team, man. I think with Lamar back and playing like this, they're favored against any of these teams we've talked about to this point, and a lot of the teams yet to come would not be excited to have to play this Ravens team right now, and certainly in the playoffs. So I feel pretty good about where they're at. It's just a +1. I mean, I'm not going to victory lap on saying the Ravens were not going to go away that easily. But I am proud of how my power rankings work. I don't think a lot of people would have had the 1-5 Baltimore Ravens ranked 14th like I did. So there hasn't been quite as much reason to slide them up and down in dramatic fashion like this. They clearly still have some work to do to kind of get into the top 10 and be more of a team that I'm like, yeah, this team can definitely go be a Super Bowl contender or anything like that. But I am looking at them as a playoff caliber team. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to our number 11 team, the Denver Broncos, just holding on to this spot. I think this is the 3rd week in a row they have not moved now that they've won 6 straight. Now, 99% of that is just, it hasn't been in the cards for them. I like what they're doing quite a lot. I feel pretty good about who they are as a football team. It's just everybody else ahead of them keeps winning and hasn't given me any reason to drop them as well. So I know Broncos fans are tired of the same ranking every week, but it was a good win to go into Houston and win as an underdog in that football game. Now, I wish for the Broncos' sake that CJ Stroud was able to finish that game so I could feel even better about this win, but it was more of the same with this team, where this defense is going to keep them around. And even if they do have these frustrating slow starts, which they did again in this game, and there are aspects of this offense that leave me that leave a bit to be desired. I think they're capable of a lot more offensively than they've shown, especially in the first half of these games, but there's clearly an ability for Bo Nix to turn it on, for Sean Payton to turn it on, and they've got enough playmakers to get stuff done as the game goes on. So they have a formula for winning games. They're a 7-2 playoff caliber football team. It's just my opinion of who they are hasn't shifted enough to be more impressed by them than all these other teams playing well, like the 7-2 New England Patriots, who are going to stay at the number 10 spot this week. Their win as well was a good win. The Falcons are a frustrating team, but I don't think they're a truly bad team. I think holding them off for a win on a day where their offense was clicking in the way that it was, and Drake London was making the catches he was making, I still think it's a good win, or at least a solid win for New England. The defense did enough, and Drake May did enough. I think Drake May actually had some errors this week. I'm not going to say he played bad, but there was some fumbles in the pick that slowed down the offense a little bit. But May certainly made enough big plays happen as well to put enough on the board and edge out the Falcons here. So just so many great plays with his legs. He makes the big throw to Demario Douglas on the deep crossing route. Douglas has had some really exciting moments this season, as have a lot of these different playmakers. Diggs has had some big games. We've had some big Kayshon Boutte games. So they got playmakers. I mean, this team just really has it all going on. And honestly, it's good to see them edge out, a closer game against a team that's playing well. I know there's not going to be a ton of respect towards beating the Falcons, but they've had some of these blowout scripts. But I think it's big for them too to kind of dig deep and win close games as well. I think that's a good team building, locker room building moment for this team as well. And while they got a bit of a gift with the missed PAT from the Falcons, they still had to control the clock and play defense to fend off a Falcons comeback effort there. So they're not moving in the power rankings. I feel damn similar to how I felt about the Patriots last week, which is very positive, and love what they've got going on. Just such a good job Mike Vrabel's doing with this team, and Drake May has developed so quickly and so well here. But I do actually have one of these teams that has been really holding on to their position here, just around the top 10 here, falling. And it's unfortunate the Tampa Bay Bucks, who were on bye, and it obviously isn't any indication of how they played this week. Everything I've said about the Bucks holds up, where I think they've had some rockiness this season on tape with some of the chaotic plays that they've needed to count on Baker Mayfield from, but a lot of good, obviously, with Baker and Igbuka, and this defense has been underrated. Excited to see them get healthy off the bye week. I literally do not feel worse about the Bucks. I'm actually very excited for their upside in the second half of this year. I think they could actually be a much better version of themselves than the very exciting version of themselves that we saw for the first half of the year. But there's just another team coming up in a couple spots that I got to find a way to move them up. It's going to be the Seattle Seahawks. We'll get there. I mean, the Seahawks just look incredible. They got to climb up. So that's why, Tampa. And I know Bucks fans are going to look at the head-to-head game a month ago that was a crazy head-to-head game that came down to the wire and say, we beat them. We shouldn't be lower than them. Look, the Seahawks are just playing incredible football right now. At some point, you have to move on from the head-to-head matchup and look at what Seattle's doing. We'll get to Seattle and all the good things that they're impressing with this year, but a couple teams in between there. So the Indianapolis Colts at number 8, they're going to drop down a spot. Again, it's mostly just because the Seahawks look insane. And I'm not going to pile on the Colts here, even though Colts fans have been quite mad at me for not putting them into the top tier despite the efforts they've had this year with the 7-1 record heading into this game and all that stuff. Clearly, they didn't play well against Pittsburgh. The offensive powerhouse that they've been was slowed down, especially the run game. I think that was the biggest difference here is they've had all this, Daniel Jones playing well and all these playmakers playing great and the play calling's been exceptional, all the things we've talked about, the offensive line, but it's all centered around an unbelievable run game with Jonathan Taylor and this offensive line. The Steelers showed that it can be stopped. I don't know if that's going to be the script moving forward, right? Like, I still think they can get back to doing that based on everything they've shown. But I do think one thing I've said about kind of part of my hesitation on putting them as a top tier team is what does it look like when they are a little bit more from behind, when you have to get into a little bit more of a Daniel Jones true drop back passing script. And I like a lot of the stuff Jones has done as a drop back passer. But we saw some more missed throws from him, just a little bit more off on some of the vertical attempts as opposed to some of these home games where they're in the dome. Some of the lesser arm talent from Daniel Jones on display, some of the pocket presence issues with the fumbles he had in this game. He throws the ball straight to a linebacker for a big pick in this game. So it's like, again, I'm not trying to jump on Daniel Jones. It's not great to see a performance like that in them. The -1 here is strictly because of what the Seahawks are doing, blowing me away, and they need their love. I feel pretty good that the Colts can get back on track and lock back in. There's so many reasons why what they've shown this season is legit. They are, to me, a legitimate playoff caliber team, but I would love to see them square off against one of these top dogs and show that they do belong as someone that can actually go on a run and be a Super Bowl contender. Their best wins right now are an extremely close game against Denver, and of course, I have them ranked above Denver. And they detonated the Chargers when they were at their worst. So if we're building a resume here for a Daniel Jones-led football team to be a, top Super Bowl contender, which means you got to beat at least 3 playoff caliber teams in a row. Can I trust them to do that? Not yet, but they are definitely a playoff caliber squad. Don't deserve to fall too much, despite getting the loss this week against Pittsburgh. All right, then at number 7, I've got the Green Bay Packers here, moving down a tier outside of that Super Bowl contenders tier. And I've defended the idea that they should be inside that top tier for a few weeks now. But I think all of the people that have pushed back on that idea on the Packers, which is, it's been a lot of people, it's been a lot of interesting conversations on this Packers team this year. I think those people that pushed back on the Packers were proven right this week. There's so much potential with this team, but right now it's a lot of unreached potential. Now, there's a lot of stuff that this team still does extremely well. And it's not that the number 7 spot isn't justified or anything like that, but they definitely have some growing to show as a football team before I can put them back into that Super Bowl contenders tier where I had them before. And this week against the Panthers, to me, by far their worst game on the year. You go into Cleveland in a trap game against a Myles Garrett defense and you look like the better team for 58 minutes and you blow it because of special teams and a bad pick from Jordan Love late. That's one thing. You go into Dallas when Dak's playing incredible ball and you tie a 40-40 football game where your offense looks incredible, that's another thing. I can defend those things. You host the Panthers as a 13.5-point favorite, and I love the Panthers, and I really am not trying to take it away from the Panthers. I'm not. I love the Panthers. I praised them earlier, but Green Bay really showed their own ass in this game in terms of why this team has been frustrating and isn't as good as they could be. They don't go into these games with the mentality and the schematic approach, the game plan, that they're a great team. You feel it when you watch them play, and it's a Matt LaFleur thing. It really is, and it's not that Matt LaFleur isn't great at the X's and O's. I still think he's a great head coach, and it's not even so much to pile on the individual play calling, oh, you should have called this, you should have called that, or they need to change the play caller or anything like that. It's the approach. It's the conservative first down run, second down screen, every single possession. Teams are catching on. Look, I understand Jordan Love forced the ball into triple coverage this game, a horrible decision that he can't take back. The Jordan Love haters are going to pile on that, along with a red zone 4th and 8 YOLO ball that it was getting a lot of crap for that I don't know what else you want him to do on that play. But you can't take away the ugly interception that he had in this game. Horrible play, right? But Jordan Love is playing really well this year. That was one drop back out of his last 77 that he hasn't looked good. Outside of that interception, he was good in this game, was awesome last week. You've got, number one, an offensive line that is much better as a pass blocking unit than they are as a run blocking unit, where they've really struggled this year. You've got Romeo Doubs breaking out. They continue to just forget that they have Matthew Golden that's looked awesome every time they push the ball to him. Christian Watson only had 4 targets in this game. He's looked really good. Obviously, we'll talk about Tucker Kraft getting hurt. That blows too. But this team should be spreading it out, passing the ball, leaning into the strengths of this offense. Yet they're just tuning things down as if they're out there with no passing game at all. Like they have to win the game 13-10. It's the same thing that ultimately cost them against the Browns. I think that's why they've had all these slow starts against, inferior opponents, teams like Arizona and Cincinnati, when they've been forced into a passing game script because they've gotten down from behind. And we saw the same thing late in this game when they lead the comeback drive. That's when they're at their best. It's been a little bit weird to figure out what is off with this Packers team. I think that's it. Now, obviously, Tucker Kraft getting hurt is also a part of this drop. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. Like, that's a brutal loss. He was breaking out as a superstar tight end this year. I don't know how you could argue otherwise. They lose him. I do wonder if it's going to flip a switch for Matt LaFleur to get out of some of the 12 personnel, early down conservative stuff, to do a little bit more spread 2x2 passing game stuff with a Luke Musgrave, who's not a good blocker, but has at least shown flashes as a pass catcher this year. It's going to be interesting to see how they react. And they've got the Eagles up coming right up against Monday night. And, we'll see how they play. They've seemed to want to play up to competition and play down to competition this year. So I don't think they're going to just roll over against Philadelphia, especially Lambeau. But you definitely gotta put some heat on Matt LaFleur to change the approach with the offense and start a little bit faster so that they're not they're not in these small margin for error games that any NFL team can take advantage of. But had to spend a lot of time on the Packers after a rough week for them. They probably had the worst week out of any team, maybe the Commanders, but to lose against Carolina, put yourself in a bad spot in terms of the 1 seed competition in the NFC North as well, and lose Tucker Kraft. Not a good week, man. But let's talk about those Seattle Seahawks. Jumping up to the number 6 ranking here, +3, jumping a lot of these other teams that, like the Bucs and Colts especially, they didn't deserve to fall. But when another team is just showing the highs that the Seahawks are showing, it's got to happen at some point. And this was definitely my worst call this offseason. I had the Seahawks ranked in the 20s. I've already expressed this, but I'll say it again. I just have so much regret for how much doubt I put into Sam Darnold working in this offense. I loved Sam Darnold last year, but I was so scared by what he showed at the end of the year for the Vikings, and I was afraid that the offensive line here wasn't going to be good enough for him, that it was going to be more of the same, that he wasn't going to be able to play at that level. Dude, he's ramped things up. He's playing even better than he played last year. He's been one of the best, if not the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and I don't know why he's not getting more MVP talk. Every week, it feels like he's making a throw of the week candidate type of pass, threading a tight window, extending a play, rolling out, dropping a dime from the pocket, whatever it is. So efficient. What did he complete? Like his first 14 passes in this game or something absurd. He's had a couple of turnovers in recent weeks, but it feels like they've come like later in the game after he's already asserted such a dominant day and such a big game that it hasn't really mattered. So it's hard to even jump on him for that. he's playing, like, the offensive line is playing better. The scheme is doing good work for this offensive line. Like, Ray Zabel's been a great addition. Abraham Lucas had a good game. Like, there's that, but it's not like the pass protection's perfect here. He gets the ball out. He hits the top of his drop. He knows exactly where it needs to go. And then you pair it with JSN, who's just unstoppable. I mean, I laughed when he was coming out, and there were some people saying he reminded them of Justin Jefferson. It's been 3 years, and I certainly didn't see that. This year, I see it. Like, the way he can contort his body for the ball, the acceleration in and out of his breaks, just the confidence and awareness as a wide receiver. You see him stepping in and out in the slot, outside. I get it. Like, props to anybody that had the foresight there. He's been one of the best players in football this year. That combination is like the story of the season. And then that's before we even talk about the defense, that under Mike Macdonald is so well coached. They're like adding new guys into the lineup. Nicky Manwari's been awesome in this system. What a great fit he's been with this scheme as the slot corner, Kyle Hamilton role in this defense. They're getting after it up front. Geez, man, I don't have enough good things to say about the Seahawks. The only reason I don't have them in the Super Bowl contenders tier, our next tier here, which is like starting with the number 5 teams, so the Seahawks are right on the cusp, like I'm just about there for them, is they don't have that signature win. It's the same thing I have with the Colts. So if I'm going to say it on the Colts, I think the same thing should apply to the Seahawks. They're killing teams, but what teams are they killing? Steelers, Saints, Cardinals, Jags, Texans, Commanders. Well, 2 weeks from now, they got to go to LA and play the Rams. That, to me, assuming they beat the Cardinals this week, Cardinals are playing better. It's not going to be an easy game. Cardinals played them tough the last time they played, but that game, week 11, is going to be their test to get into that top tier. So, Seahawks fans, just laying it out there for you. That's when your opportunity is going to come to get that resume enough to put them into this top tier. But let's break down these top 5 teams. There was some shakeup with the top 5 this week, too. Again, a lot of exciting football this week. But at number 5, I'm going to have the Detroit Lions. Not the week Detroit was looking to have coming off the bye week. I'm not going to panic about Detroit. I think the one real takeaway from this one, losing to the Vikings, on a day that they did just have a lot of kind of sloppy mistakes, pre-snap penalties. The turnover from David Montgomery was huge. Goff just wasn't super sharp, I think, coming off the bye week. I think the interior of the offensive line in their losses has really showed up as a weakness for this team, and the Vikings attacked it. I think if there's weight to the -3 here from Detroit, dropping down to the number 5 spot, it is that in certain matchups can be an issue. And I think, like I said, the Vikings took advantage of it. So there's an added concern about that interior of the offensive line. But beyond that, I think Detroit's going to be able to bounce back just fine on an uncharacteristic day for them. But you do only get that excuse so many times, because that's what I said when they went into Arrowhead and lost, is that was an uncharacteristic day. So that's twice now. Fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times. F the peace signs, something like that. For the J. Cole fans out there. But yeah, I do think Detroit will bounce back. I have, they've built up so much goodwill that I'll keep them here for now and anticipate a bounce back for them as they look forward. But then the Kansas City Chiefs at number 4, dropping down 3 spots as well. Not the week they were hoping to have, as they are vying not just for their own division, but that game against the Bills likely to have like 1 seed in the AFC implications. That feels kind of far-fetched at this point, as the Chiefs do fall to 5-4. Now, the Bills played a hell of a game. I'm not going to overreact for the Chiefs and drop them out of the Super Bowl contenders tier, but clearly, like, they got knocked off their mark against the Bills, and Mahomes did not live up to the level he's been playing this year. I think this was more of a credit to the Bills in this big matchup, but clearly the Chiefs aren't a perfect team either. I'm not going to say like their issues from earlier in the season are creeping back up, but we did see earlier in the year like some of the flaws in this team, with a little bit of lack of D-line talent beyond Chris Jones. Defense definitely isn't like without its holes. You're oftentimes counting on a perfect game plan from Spags, and they did get diced up by Joe Brady, and the Bills just outcoached the Chiefs in this game, really on both sides of the ball. Chiefs are just going to have to dig in and bounce back and keep things going from all the good stuff they've shown for the 3 or 4 weeks prior. But I'm going to bump the Rams up to number 3 here. They just look so good, dude. Like Matthew Stafford kind of just flying under the radar how good he's playing right now. Now, it was the Saints. Don't want to spend too much time on this. They were supposed to kill the Saints, but they did. The thing with the Rams is it's just kind of hard to pick holes in this team. I think they have a little bit of a lack of talent in the secondary. We saw in that Eagles matchup, if you got superstars, you can go at those DBs and should be able to make some plays. But beyond that, I mean, the defense is so well coached. The D-line is so nasty. Stafford playing like this. Puka Nacua has been one of the best players in football this year. The addition of Devontae Adams has been sweet. I mean, they are a super complete team. They're incredibly well coached. I love what the Rams are doing. They're absolutely a Super Bowl contender right now. And then the Eagles at number 2. I tweeted this out, but I think the Eagles had the best bye week I've ever seen for a team. They added a bunch of talent to this team for one, most notably Jalen Phillips. Very fun addition. Could be their best edge rusher. Give them a legitimate kind of number 2 piece to win some one-on-ones with Jalen Carter in there. But they also trade for Jair Alexander. Why not? They get Michael Carter. Why not? Brandon Graham coming out of retirement, dropping into this team. So, the roster got better. The roster got healthier during the bye week. They somehow, for a second year in a row, have managed to be the most healthy team in the NFL as they head into the second half of the year. That training staff knows something other teams don't. So often it feels like we just avoid mentioning how healthy these teams are at times. Was a big deal for the Eagles last year and looks like it's going to be the case again this year. But even beyond that, 2 of their top contenders for the 1 seed in the NFC lost with Detroit and Green Bay. The other 2 with the Rams and the Bucs, they've already beaten this year. So it was an incredible bye week for the Eagles, and now they're going to go to Lambeau for Monday Night Football. I think they're poised with Jalen Hurts playing better. The passing game's been opening up. I think some of these additions for the defense, if just one of these hits with Jair, Michael Carter, and Jalen Phillips, who are obviously all have talent on their resume, if just one of those hits, this team is set up really well for a second half push to try and repeat here. But then we have the Buffalo Bills. Huge win. No way around it. I mean, coming off of what they did last week, just destroying the Panthers in Charlotte, coming off of their bye week. Josh Allen playing exceptional football. I mean, just so locked in this game against the Chiefs. Clearly outdueled Mahomes in this one. And the defense has really been good coming off of their bye week, right? Obviously, they were amazing against the Panthers last week, but I thought they did some really good stuff against this Chiefs offense that has been impressive this year. I mean, Joey Bosa has been a huge green light for this team. They've managed to get prime Joey Bosa back, which is that's the number one thing this defense has missed is a game-changing pass rusher. And I know they've gotten some injuries, Ed Oliver, sucks to lose him, and Michael Hoyt made some plays in this game. He goes down for the year. That sucks, obviously, but Bosa's genuinely been a superstar, game-changing, math-changing type of player this year for them. If he can stay healthy for another half of the year, that's something they just haven't had going into the playoffs. That dude. That was my biggest takeaway from this one, but obviously the offense doing what they did against this Chiefs defense, proving that they're capable of it against this opponent. It's a big deal. I mean, they have completely wiped off the concerns from them in those 2 straight losses against the Patriots and the Falcons. They've completely wiped away so many of those concerns, cleaned things up, and are playing exceptional ball as we head into the second half of the year. So they deserve the number 1 spot for that big win this week. But a long show here this week. It was a lot to react to, but I wasn't afraid to go a little bit longer here too, because with it being studs and duds weeks for me on the channel, with that player review series going on, I'm not doing game recap podcasts. just because I only have so much time in the week. So if you missed the game recap episodes, I hope you enjoy the longer power rankings here this week. But yeah, what a crazy week of football. Just when last week there was not a ton of movement in the rankings, it felt like things were starting to slot in. The NFL forever able to surprise us, and they throw a bunch of new narratives into this season that is really getting fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode today. If you haven't hit that like button yet, please do. Really helps me out. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of the rankings this week. I'm heading out, but I will see you soon for our next episode of Studs and Duds here on the channel. Peace out.